So yesterday I had this moment where I needed to pause and feel the fear that was coming up, which was really scary. Let me backtrack and walk you through it. I've been really focusing on showing up for myself in the ways that I need. And a big part of that is my presence online and sharing my art and sharing about my journeys and my shadow work and my mental health. And a lot of times I will backtrack. You always hear stories about how when you're not ready or when your nervous system doesn't feel safe, you experience self sabotage. And that can show up in so many different ways. But this was a moment where I experienced it in a way that, looking back, I can see the pattern repeating. But I'd never really stopped and acknowledged it and worked through it. I would usually let it get the better part of me. Part of my whole mental health issues that I've been dealing with for forever is that nagging little voice that likes to tell stories that honestly aren't great to other people. Like, the stories about how everybody's going to hate you because you're doing the wrong thing and you're showing up in the wrong way and you said the wrong words and it wasn't the right kind of support that person needed and that person is going to hate you forever. If you've experienced anxiety, you have probably, heard and felt that voice before, and it is not great. It is not fun by any stretch of means. And yesterday, that voice started showing up for me as I was showing up for myself and my business. I was actually taking the time to bulk create some posts, some carousels, so that I could set myself up for success. I'm noticing these patterns of having energy during some weeks, usually the week following the full moon. And I'm trying to take advantage of that kind of energy when I have it, where I have it, instead of expecting myself to show up in the exact same way day after day. Because reality is that's not how I work. It's not how most people work, but it's how society wants you to work. And so, in doing this and setting myself up and creating this one specific type of post to set myself up for about a month, I was about a third of the way through, and this nagging little voice started playing in my head about a conversation and the ways I'd reached out to a couple different friends earlier that day and the day prior. And it was not fun. That felt like a huge major trigger, and it made me want to just completely pause what I was doing, take a step back from my computer, go smoke a little and just escape my brain, or to just, instead of creating the things I wanted to be creating and it's at the time to create, going and consuming in a way that wasn't productive. Because we all know what the doom scrolling is, where you're stuck on your phone and just consuming content after content, and it's giving you those quick little dopamine fixes, but it's not helping. It's actually bringing you down, and I've noticed that a lot in myself lately. And so I paused. I literally wrote down notes talking about, hey, this is what I'm doing. My nervous system is feeling dysregulated because this is a way I want to show up for myself, but it's a new way to consistently show up for myself. And that's scary. New things are scary. So I took a moment, I wrote it down, I acknowledged those emotions. I said, thank you for being here. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. But this isn't helpful. This isn't helpful right now. I know my friends do not hate me. They've told me this because, we all got anxiety. And they have shared with me how much sometimes they value what I say. And logically, I know this, but subconsciously, it's that old pattern that was trying to pull me in, to try and keep me safe, because safe is experiencing the same thing over and over again. That's how our nervous system sees it. And, for me, that's not creating the business I want for myself. that's staying where I've been for years in a place that was okay for me before, but isn't an energetic match for me now. So I paused, I sat with it, I journaled for a minute, and then I went right back to where I was. And that was huge for me because I was able to recognize that it wasn't just about the conversation I'd had, but it was largely about the actual activity that I was doing. And the conversation popping up and circling in my mind over and over again was there because it's a familiar pattern. It's a familiar pattern that keeps me somewhere safe, even though it doesn't feel it. I feel like I'm kind of just repeating myself here, but I don't know. It was a huge moment for me. And in my very long mental health journey, because it has been years that I've been working on these things now, I find the first step in working through a cyclical pattern that repeats itself that might not be helpful. I'm trying not to use the word bad because these things used to be helpful. They used to serve a purpose. They used to keep me safe in various situations where escapism was more something I needed. But now it's not helpful. It's not an energetic match anymore. And so the first part in getting through those moments that like to flare up that are no longer an energetic match is to notice them, to acknowledge them, to see them and recognize them and thank them for being there, because at some point they would have served a purpose. Otherwise they wouldn't exist, right? That's how brains work. Neuroplasticity, it likes to create patterns and loops and keep you in the same thing. But when you stretch that, when you expand those brain capacity muscles, you're strengthening your neuroplasticity, which is honestly just a really fun word to say. It's like strengthening your brain muscles. It's strengthening and expanding your capacity for change and bringing in those new things. Now, I did, when I was done my activities, come back and sit with this, but because I took that moment and I paused and I acknowledged it, I was able to then go work for another hour and complete more work than I have in quite a while. And it was nice. It was exciting. I felt proud of myself, not just for completing the work, but for recognizing the barrier and understanding what it was. Because that understanding, that is the key part. And, you know, it's not always easy, but it is always worth it. So yeah, if you have a barrier that is coming up for you over and over again, something that you feel like is blocking you, I would love to hear about it. I would love to deep dive and talk about, strategies or tools or resources if that's something you'd like. I'm really trying to go a bit of a new direction and blend and bring a blended version of myself to the internet, to the community I'm trying to build, where I talk about my spiritual practice, I talk about my shadow work, I talk about what I'm trying to build and where I'm trying to go. And a large part of that is mental health and art, because, those are big pieces of who I am and they always have been. So this is me showing up. I encourage you to show up for yourself, whatever that looks like, wherever you are, whatever journey you're taking, because honestly, it's worth it.